If it's working. You're live. Hello. Hi, this is Warren Redlick. I'm here with Will from Origami Cybertruck. Origami Cybertruck. I didn't put his Tesla handle in the description. I don't think I put it in the description yet, but if you Google or if you go on Twitter and look for Origami Cybertruck, you will find Will. We've had a number of interesting conversations on Twitter, and in the interest of having ongoing conversations about Tesla and SpaceX, Neuralink, the Boring Company, I like interviewing people that I meet on Twitter and elsewhere to talk about topics that I think are interesting. So, Will, I think you said you run a small business. We can see the wiring in the background. Tell everyone what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. I run a small company that basically does what's called smart work zone systems. So essentially what we do is we design hardware and software that's all integrated together to basically try to prevent people from having crashes in highway construction areas is fundamentally what we do, sort of in a nutshell. So I'm kind of like the super boring Steve Jobs in that regard, because we do the software and the hardware all together in one.
And how did you get interested in Tesla, Cybertruck? What got you going on that?
Geez, it's like I own a Model 3, but I kind of came to it like a lot of people did, like kind of hearing a little bit about it. Like I remember kind of hearing about Tesla back way in the Roadster days. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I was an early investor. No, I wasn't. But I kind of heard about it, was paying a little bit of attention to it. I actually used to own a solar installation company, and really like one of the first, that was back in Colorado in like 06 through 08. And one of my first conscious, like concrete thoughts about, Elon Musk and stuff like that was when I noticed that Solar City was going to start entering our space, and I started learning about him. I was like, oh man, I don't want to compete with this guy. Jeez.
Okay.
This is like not someone I want to take on at scale, But
and now that they're doing solar roof and they're doing solar installations, have you thought about becoming an installer for Tesla, or is that not a good path?
When I was doing the solar game, it was a pretty cool gig. It's like very, very commoditized now, which is a great thing for the world, but I think maybe not as good of a thing for the average kind of solar installer person.
It makes it harder to make more money.
I mean, that's the thing is like when you're selling a $50,000 system, like we were back in the day, because, panels were $5 per watt just for the panel. Now they're 45 cents a watt. Okay. Like, a 5% margin on that is a lot more money for the same amount of work that you're doing these days with much lower prices. So I think it's probably harder, but I haven't been in that game for, 12 years or whatever.
Okay. So, and how did you come upon the name Origami Cybertruck? I love that name.
Yeah. I just used to love doing origami when I was a little kid. I had all these books about it, and I'd fold it and stuff. Like I think I was always sort of an engineer at heart. And then when I saw the Cybertruck come out and I saw them kind of explaining how it's folded up and stuff like that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. It's like origami. So it's kind of like a throwback to my own sort of interest as a kid. And I think, a lot of those interests you never quite let go of. So it really just appealed to me from that reason. And I just went with it. I was like, cool. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for folks who are watching, our plan right now is the first thing we're going to talk about is something I've made a couple of videos about, and I think Will disagrees with me about, so that's why we're going to have a fun conversation about whether vehicle to grid is viable. The second thing, because he's into Cybertruck and origami, some other variations of what could be done with the Cybertruck model, the Cybertruck construction. I just posted a video last night with sort of a cyber van, cyber minibus concept. And then I actually have this, I think it's a really interesting idea. I think Will thinks it's an interesting idea for like a CyberCabin or a CyberHouse. And I think that's going to be to me, that I think they're all interesting, but I'm really excited about that particular topic, and I'm probably going to make a video of it down the road. So, Will, let's start with vehicle to grid. And I told Will before I was going to put this up on the screen. So for everyone watching, this is a tweet that Elon, this is a tweet, back and forth tweet that Elon had with someone named Disruption Research, where Elon was asked, do consumers have limited time left to buy a Tesla car, since prices would have to go up several fold to balance supply and demand once you solve full self-driving? And Elon said yes, basically implying, you know what? At a certain point, people will no longer be able to buy a Tesla vehicle, which is one of my videos is Tesla will stop selling cars. Elon then clarified, to be clear, consumers will still be able to buy a Tesla, but the clearing price will rise significantly, as a fully autonomous car that can function as a robo-taxi is several times more valuable than a non-autonomous car. So,
right.
So Will, having heard that, I'm going to move this over my face so people can see you. What do you think about the tweets?
I mean, okay, like, obviously I'm a huge Elon fan. Sometimes I think, he'll get a little bit speculative. Like, Elon's great about seeing like what he thinks can happen today. I think that's like one of his greatest strengths. And then projecting that in the future, I think that's why he's so successful at doing the things that he's been able to do. So I think, like, the way I read that tweet is, at that particular moment, Elon was seeing how one of the possibilities forward would go. But I don't necessarily believe that that means that this is definitely what would happen. And I don't necessarily believe that that Elon would stick to this if this idea wasn't the most logical way to further the Tesla mission, which is, of course, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. So insofar as like that particular strategy would be the best implementation of Tesla's mission, they might do that, but I don't necessarily think that that's what it will end up being.
Did I
make sense?
Did I misspeak when I started and say vehicle to grid when I did the intro?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're going to talk about whether Tesla will stop selling cars. Vehicle to grid is tomorrow's interview. Sorry about that. We're going to talk about whether Tesla's going to stop selling cars. We're going to talk about other vehicles that could be made on the Cybertruck platform, and then the CyberCabin idea. So sorry about that. So I'm going to move this tweet out of the way now, so that I made a video where I suggested that Tesla would stop selling cars, and I don't even know if I had seen that tweet when I made the video.
Mm-hmm.
The position, the way I see it is, I wouldn't say if, I would say when Robo-taxi happens.
Uh-huh.
The value of a robo-taxi is so high, and this is both in terms of, what he talked about in the tweet was about pricing. That,
right.
If currently your Model 3 costs around $45,000, if it's going to go up to 5 times its previous value, then it's going to cost $225,000 to buy a Tesla Model 3, and no one's buying a Tesla Model 3 for $225,000 for personal use. Not no one, but few.
Right. Why would you? Sure.
And the other side of that theory is that you wouldn't buy, if your goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, which is the Tesla mission. Your goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. Then people buying cars and leaving them in their garage 22 hours a day doesn't accelerate the transition as much as putting the car out there as a robo-taxi and having it run 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day. If you have a robo-taxi that's running 12 hours a day versus a person driving it 2 hours a day, the robo-taxi is accelerating that transition 6 times as fast. It's being used 6 times as much. It's taking 6 times as many internal combustion engine vehicles off the road. So that was the thinking I had in my head. That was the thinking I had in my head at the time. Does it make sense, or is there another angle on this?
I mean, I think that's a totally that's a logically consistent viewpoint, but I think that it doesn't necessarily have or it doesn't necessarily include all of the real world implications of that. And kind of like a framework that I've been thinking about is, for example, okay, so let's go with this for a moment, and let's just say, all right, in the future, at some point, however many years, we could argue endlessly on Twitter about when this will be, or on YouTube about it. But let's suppose that at some point in the future, Tesla achieves full autonomy level 5. Okay. At that point, how many vehicles would that be that would be needed to essentially like replace, like the world's taxi fleet, for example. I was kind of preparing for this. I wasn't able to figure out exactly how many like taxis there are worldwide, but I did see a figure from 2019 that was like there's about 4 million Uber drivers out there, for example.
Yeah.
And so like if we just kind of use that number as a ballpark, because like, yeah, Uber drivers aren't driving 24 hours a day or even every day necessarily, but presumably a robotaxi network would increase demand for hours of use. Let's just say that 4 million robotaxis ends up being a reasonable number at some point in the reasonable future. Okay, even if Tesla reduced their prices or their cost to produce from whatever it is today for a base Model 3 down to say like $20,000, if my math's not incorrect here, I think that would be like $80 billion they would have to come up with and keep on their balance sheets if they wanted to do like 4 million robotaxis at that rate. And that might, so then you have this question of like, well, certainly Tesla could come up with $80 billion, like their valuation supports it. They could do that, but would they want to come up with $80 billion to do that? Or would it be better to, if they came up with that money, to use that in some other way rather than keeping these assets around, and instead do the model that Elon has also talked about, where they would continue to sell Teslas at a reasonable price to consumers who might then choose to put these on a robotaxi network, conceivably 24 hours a day. Does that make sense?
So the first thing, you made a bunch of points there. First of all, for people who just started watching, because some people have come in, we're talking about whether Tesla will stop selling cars. I made a video about it a while ago. Will Tesla stop selling cars? And this is Will from Origami Cybertruck, and he thinks that Tesla will continue to sell cars even after Robo-taxi comes along, and Will's making some points about that. So the first thing, the $80 billion, I think this is self-funding. Tesla, you start with, let's suppose magically it was beginning January 2021. This is not going to happen, but let's suppose magically January 2021, Robo-taxi network goes live, and Tesla produces 1 million Robo-taxis that year. Okay, well, it costs Tesla for 1 million vehicles. Let's say it's $30,000 a vehicle. At that point, it cost them, what was that, $30 billion? $30
billion,
okay.
Yeah.
So they got $30 billion that they spent, and that $30 billion, they spent it to build the cars. They would have spent it to build the cars anyway. They put the cars into Robo-taxi service, and each vehicle is generating that much money in that year. So it's self-funding. Right. The next year they build more cars. In the first year that the vehicle is produced, it pays for itself as a Robo-taxi. So I don't think that argument flies. And before I go on, there's a question. I like to address questions. So Mighty Tesla asked 2 questions. Will the FSD package be price adjusted to its commercial value, was question 1. And will Tesla sell vehicles without full self-driving, even though it is less safe than a human driver? So I'm going to answer those real quick, and then we'll come back, Will. And for everybody watching, again, this is Will from Origami Cybertruck on Twitter. And he has the Origami Cybertruck channel on YouTube as well. So will the FSD package be price adjusted to commercial value? Well, that's what Elon said. I mean, why would you sell a vehicle for less than it's worth? I mean, maybe there would be some discount, but they're certainly going to radically increase the price if they're able to put it into service for themselves and make money. I don't see why they wouldn't. And then, would they sell vehicles without FSD? I think the answer to that is no, because you make a vehicle without FSD, you're making very limited profit on that vehicle. It makes a lot more profit to put that vehicle in with FSD and run it as a robo-taxi or sell it to someone. So coming back to you, Will, the first point you made was about the $80 billion. I'm trying to remember what the second point was, because my brain isn't that big. Was it?
Well, just how that capital could otherwise be used. But like, to respond to your point about like, yeah, they could do that. Yeah, it'll be self-funding. That I don't disagree with that. But what I'd also say is like, that's what's so cool about Tesla's model of being fully vertically integrated. And we can talk about like the competitors in a moment, like say Waymo with like, you got Waymo, you've got a Chrysler Pacifica minivan that they might, get these, highly integrated. And then like you'd have some other person or people who would own these vehicles in that model. With Tesla, it's like they could do it all in-house, or they could have all these other options. So like the how can I put this? They could.
Are you talking about licensing?
No, I'm not talking about licensing. I'm really just talking about the business model of how they choose to do it. Like Tesla, because they do everything in-house, they have an incredible flexibility of the range of options, right?
Yeah.
So like, you're right. Yeah, they could decide to stop selling these vehicles and internalize, 100% of the profits from a self-driving robotaxi fleet. They could do that. There would be benefits and there would be kind of costs against that. There would be one benefit, of course, that they'd get all of the self-driving robotaxi revenue, but that, they'd also have all this, depreciating stuff on their balance sheets, and they'd have to come up with the capital to keep that going, et cetera, which, may not be a problem. But since they can adjust the split of revenue between, a prospective owner of a robotaxi and themselves, since, only Teslas can be on the Tesla network, they have just so much more flexibility in that. It's like, well, you could also make the argument of why not get these off the books? They could probably still, the profitability, both in like absolute terms and return on capital terms, probably very similar to them. And the speed at which they could get these out there, because there's people who are like, hey, all I got to do is buy this thing, finance it, put it out there, and like vacuum it and take care of it, whatever. Like that's awesome, and that's like all stuff that Tesla doesn't have to do. So my point, I guess, is that sure, they might stop selling vehicles, but that's definitely not the only set of that's not the only business case that is like very efficient for Tesla to do.
Okay, so. My take on that and my thought there is that at least in the places like the United States and Western Europe, Tesla owning its own robo-taxis and running its own robo-taxi network, there are other advantages beyond just owning it. So first of all, when you sell a vehicle, there's transactions costs. If you don't sell it, you don't have the same transactions costs that you have when you sell the vehicle.
Right.
When you run the robo-taxi network, there's costs to maintaining the vehicle, there's charging the vehicle, there's a lot of steps along the way. Now, fortunately, the cost of maintenance is lower, but right. I believe Tesla would be able to do that more efficiently on its own, again, vertically integrated, create its own. Now, maybe they set it up and they let others use the charging network and they let others use their maintenance system, but every time you do that, you're creating additional transaction costs that make the system less efficient. So,
right. And well, sorry, I just would point out that like one way to like think about this is like, so like I'm also a small-time Airbnb host, and I'm also a landlord in my other life. And like when I started doing Airbnb, the thing I realized is like, oh my God, I'm not a landlord anymore. I'm actually now in the service industry, right? Like a tenant, a long-term tenant doesn't like call you when they need new towels. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like on a Saturday morning. Whereas like an Airbnb guest does. And I think that we also kind of have to consider the implications of this, like as a taxi network. Like it's not like, Tesla leasing cars. It's like Tesla running a network. So yeah, I agree with you about the maintenance costs are less, but maintenance isn't all that you are then dealing with. You're also going to be dealing with, who's hosing out the vomit, who's doing the cleaning. Like that's a massive undertaking that's a very manual act that, can be optimized, but still has to be done by somebody. Does Tesla want to take that on? Maybe they don't.
I think the point is that somebody has to do it, and Tesla would be able to do it more efficiently. The other thing that you mentioned, you said something about there's 4 million Uber drivers, and I've heard other people say this, I wanted to address this. There's this perception that there's a limited market for robo-taxis. That, hey, there's only 4 million Uber drivers out there. That's all the market that there is. But keep in mind, Uber costs about $2 a mile. At the beginning, right. I expect Tesla robo-taxis to charge $1 a mile, which means it's much more attractive for consumers. And then really, I think right now the cost per mile of a Tesla Model 3 is around 15 cents a mile. I think it was 18 cents last I saw. But once you go to the million-mile battery, and million mile, I think you spread the cost of the vehicle over more miles. I think you end up getting the cost down to 15 cents a mile. And even if the vehicle is only used paid 60% of the time, you're going to be able to get the pricing down to 50 cents a mile pretty quickly. If you, I think pretty much Tesla could charge 50 cents a mile if they wanted to, and there's a threshold there in the United States, and I can't speak to certain other countries, but the United States, I think Canada, Europe are comparable. I think Japan is comparable. The cost per mile of owning your own vehicle is around 60 cents a mile. It depends. If you drive a lot of miles and you drive a cheap car, it's less. Drive a brand new car and you don't drive a lot of miles, it's more. If you have a drunk driving history or some other, or credit problems, then your cost of financing the car is more. So there's a lot of factors that go in there. So one of the thoughts, by the way, is just a quick pitch for why Robo-taxi is amazing. Is at the very beginning, Robo-taxi takes the drivers off the road for whom it costs the most to own their own car. And a lot of those people are people with drunk driving convictions, people with suspended licenses, and people who are otherwise expensive drivers, young, teenage drivers. You actually take the most dangerous drivers off the road first. So the early days of Robo-taxi make a big impact on making our roads safer. That's just one thought that just popped in my head. Just my little pitch for Robo-taxi. But the point there about
hey, Warren, I'm on board for robo-taxis. Don't get me wrong.
No, but the point being that as the cost of the ride comes down, as the cost of the ride goes, you start at $1 a mile and it goes down to 70 cents, then it goes down to 50 cents. Once it drops, so early on it takes off the people for whom it's expensive to drive.
Right.
As it comes down, it gets to the point where it starts taking regular people off the road. It starts taking the majority of people off the road, saying, their pitch here is, it's not just cost. Like, you don't have to shop for car insurance anymore. You don't have to go to the gas station anymore. You don't have to go get oil changes anymore. You don't have to worry about changing the tires. The robo-taxi company takes care of all that. You don't have to find your car in a parking. I'm sorry, I'm just going off on a little rant here, Will. You go to the store. You don't worry about where you park. The car drops you off at the front. As you're coming out of the store, you hit the button. The car comes and picks you up at the front. You don't have to go out in the rain to go find your car. Your car isn't hot or cold when you get to it. It's ready for you. It's waiting for you. It's right there. It's more convenient. If it cost me 60 cents a mile for my car now and I could do Robo-taxi for 75 cents a mile, I'd do it for the convenience. But it's really going to come down to less than that. And so the point there is, when I think the market for Robo-taxi is I don't want to say unlimited, but it's really, really large. Because if you go from not just Uber vehicles to anyone who owns a car saying, wow, this is a lot more cost effective than me owning my own car, then the market is very, very large. And keep in mind there, if every Robo-taxi takes 5 ICE vehicles off the road, okay, we sell 17 million cars a year in the United States. Well, that only leaves room for 3 million Robo-taxis.
Right. Well, yeah. So 2 things about that. First of all, that figure I found, I was like trying to figure out what is the current size of like the world's like non-owned vehicle fleet. And there really aren't good figures about taxis. So I was just using that as a starting point for the discussion. I certainly think that the number of miles driven by robo-taxis will be very high very quickly after they're introduced, and more than there are currently Uber or taxi drivers combined today. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, real quick.
Second thing
Go ahead. Second thing.
The second thing I was just thinking about was, this is a little bit tangential, but since you brought it up, I do think it's like really funny, because when you hear like auto analysts and people talking about like, Tesla and all these cars, they're saying, well, it's not like every car on the road is going to be a Tesla. I mean, even the people who are very bullish on Tesla are like, they're only going to be making 10 or 20 million cars a year if Elon continues the 50% growth rate. Yeah, I know, by 2030, right? And it's like, yes, but also if they're robo-taxis, that will be all of the cars.
Right.
Because why would you make 80 million cars if you only need 20 million of them in the future? You know what I'm saying? Like, yes. I don't think we're going to be making 80 million cars a year for forever anymore, like we have been. Everything's going to change.
Okay. So real quick, I want to respond to a couple of questions. Pull my glasses on so I can read this clearly. So, Rodius Rex asks, do you think Tesla owners would volunteer to drive for Tesla's pre-robo-taxi driver network? My answer is largely no. There are a few people who are driving Teslas for Uber or Lyft, but the practical reality is most current Tesla owners are wealthy, and Uber and Lyft drivers don't make a lot of money. So it doesn't make sense to drive for Uber or Lyft with your Tesla if you make more money doing something else. There would be a few, but I don't think there would be enough for it to be productive. And I actually think the reason why you might do it is to get some sort of understanding of how the market's going to work. But human drivers are going to taint that. And you could just, once Robo-taxi goes live, you could buy Lyft for like $1 and get all their intellectual property. Because Lyft and Uber are going to go bankrupt as soon as Robo-taxi goes live. So sorry, there was a second.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any comments on that about whether Tesla volunteer to drive?
Well, I don't know if current Tesla owners would en masse volunteer to drive, but I do think that if it were allowed on another platform, I think that there would be a lot of people who are currently driving for Uber and Lyft if once they start experiencing the economics of an electric vehicle would definitely do that. So
it makes sense for a current
it
makes sense for a current Uber or Lyft driver to drive a Tesla instead because they're driving a lot of miles and their cost of ownership would be a lot lower if they used a Tesla. So somebody who's already driving for Uber or Lyft would make more sense for them to drive an Uber or Lyft. The other question was from V Nelson: if Tesla offered a 100-mile free ride in auto Teslas, many people would opt for their use on a daily. But yeah, I think. Maybe people opt for their use on a daily basis. I think that's a good point, that one way Tesla could get people trying Robo-taxi is by offering them, discounted rides at the beginning. That certainly makes sense that they would try that. I don't know that it's going to be a difficult thing. And another new comment right now from Betten, Texas, or Betten Tinks. I don't know how you pronounce that. Bet Tint X. I'm 81 years old. I would love Robo-taxi. Finding a close parking place is impossible. Seems everyone has a handicap placard. Yeah, that's very true. That's actually one of the big things why I liked Uber in the first place. Is my mother is 85, turning 85 next month, and I got her using Uber a few years back. No longer doing much of that anyway, but I did get her trying out Uber, and it was a lot better than her driving a car or her riding buses, and my mother could afford it. So I do think that's a big advantage, and Robo-taxi would make that less expensive, make it more accessible to more seniors, or people with. Thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, I completely agree about the increased access to mobility because of the cost for many categories of people. It used to be the case, at least for me in my life, where if I was going to go out and there was going to be alcohol consumed, if you're a college student or something, it's you really someone needs to be the designated driver, or in some cases people have a drink and try to game how much fun they can have before they have to drive. And as the prices of you not having to be responsible for driving come down for whatever reason that you need that, it's just an unqualifiedly good thing in my opinion. The second thing I was going to respond to I think the second question in there was, I don't know that Tesla will give away a bunch of free credit necessarily. That seems kind of like an old style of doing business. That seems really Uber-y to do. So I would never rule anything out, but one thing that I actually really just enjoy is kind of watching the way that Tesla and Elon figure out ways to do really creative marketing things. In case there's anyone out here who hasn't been following this part, Tesla China, they've got this big thing with 10-cent games for this very popular video game there. Yes. And it's they figure out ways to make, what I love about Tesla is they always figure out ways to not just do something that would normally cost them a bunch of money, cheaper. They actually oftentimes find ways to make that pay them. And that's one of the reasons they're devastatingly effective in the market, is because they find ways to make a situation that in the past would have been a net loss to them become a net positive. Let me give you an example of this, not to go on too long. Supercharger network. One of the big problems with electric vehicles, of course, is where do you charge them? People, when you're on a road trip, obviously around town, it's not a problem. You charge at your house. Tesla starts the Supercharger network, invests a lot of money into it. Sure, at the time it cost them a lot to do the investment, but man, the way that they're going to leverage that network in the future, putting distributed power storage at those, I'm sure that's coming. The way they're going to put they're going to go to these places and say, hey, how would you like to have your parking lot covered with solar panels now, like above where all the cars are parked, so everyone can be in the shade? Like they're going to just take this thing that no other auto company is putting out a charging network because they just see cost and no opportunity there. Tesla's like, okay, well, we got to do this. How are we going to make this thing a net positive that's going to even further put us ahead? And that's, again, when we see them start to market for the robo-taxi network, I'm just really excited to see what they do. I have no idea what they're going to do with that.
Right. Okay. So, Brian, Genevieve asks, once Cybertruck pre-orders hit 1 million, Tesla might stop taking orders. I think you might be right about that. I don't think so, though. And Brian asks, I think they'd stop taking orders once Robo-taxi network goes live. Brian asks, about me, that I have a very bullish outlook on Tesla stock price, $100,000 a share, which, by the way, once it splits, that'd be $20,000 a share. But Brian
I'd be happy with that, yeah.
Brian's curious whether you share that optimism about Tesla's stock price.
I mean, sure, like eventually. Like I think so Rob Maurer on the Tesla Daily podcast, he did it was a couple days ago. If you guys haven't checked out his thing, he's got a YouTube channel as well, which is a simulcast, basically the podcast. He did a presentation to, I think, Northwestern University about the, sorry if I got that wrong, about the business case around that. Sorry, and where's I going with that?
Well, you were just talking about whether you think the share price is going to go up that high, and what Rob Maurer said about Tesla optimism.
I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes here for a second. He's got this chart up there, and I had seen this before. And it's like, what are the 10 biggest companies today by market cap? And if you look at them, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't share it. But if you look at them, it's like the top 10 are all like oil companies and maybe a car company here and there, and like maybe a couple other companies as well. So it's like, do I think that Tesla has a chance of disrupting those 10 companies to a significant degree? Yeah, I do. And so is there enough value there for Tesla to become a multi-trillion-dollar company by just destroying most of the top 10 current market cap companies? Yeah, I do.
I don't think it takes out Amazon or Apple, but the oil companies are in big trouble.
Yeah, Amazon and Apple probably will be fine, but yeah, like Saudi Aramco, maybe not so good.
And Microsoft should be fine, but yes, the oil companies in particular, and there are a lot of these aren't publicly traded companies mostly. These are, I think Saudi Aramco is now publicly traded, but
yeah, sort of, yeah.
But these are often they're country owned or owned by countries. So I wanted to move on. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about on this Tesla. I think we've covered the will Tesla stop selling cars topic. So the next thing I wanted to talk with you about was other variations on the Cybertruck platform. Again, for people who are watching, Will runs the Origami Cybertruck Twitter. I know him through Origami Cybertruck on Twitter. He also has the Origami Cybertruck channel on YouTube. I'd encourage you to follow him on Twitter and subscribe to him on YouTube. And I am fascinated by the Cybertruck's structure, the way they're building it, the exoskeleton concept, the low cost of making it, that type of thing. So I just made a video, and I'm sorry, really quick, a little ad for myself. If you guys like this chat, there's please super sticker or whatever it is. Any contributions be appreciated, and also please consider supporting me on Patreon. Will, are you on Patreon, or do you have any?
No, I'm just doing this for fun right now. Like I don't really have any costs, so I don't have any reason to people to send me
I'm
money
putting a heck of a lot of time into this, so I
know it's a lot of time. This is just my hobby, though. But,
so I put out a video last night with the Tesla minivan / cyberbus, and Elon had tweeted about this in the past. That this is in 2016. Elon, and in Master Plan Part 2, Elon said they would do a high-density urban transport vehicle, and he initially said it was going to be on the Model X chassis. That was in 2016. I think with the advent of Cybertruck, it makes more sense to use this. And so one of my questions is, will Cybertruck have a skateboard? Is that the right concept for the way it's being made?
Okay, so I have a theory about this. Obviously, I don't have any inside information that anybody else doesn't have who spends a ton of time watching Tesla on Twitter and YouTube and stuff. I suspect the way that Cybertruck is going to be built is I suspect that they're going to take basically, they've got this load bearing, low polygon origami folded body. And that is really going to support all of the weight. So like, if you put a ton of bricks in the back, that's going to be supported by these, these angles, right? But as far as, okay, cool. Like that's really easy to make. There's no paint. So you save like, I don't know, $500 million from not building a paint shop at the new Gigafactory, Texas, for example. That's awesome. But you still have to like connect everything, like you still have to like connect your shock towers to your wheel, your control arms and your wheels and your axles and all this stuff, like all of that stuff. There's a ton of little things, and that's probably not well suited for a folded stainless steel architecture that require a lot of operations, a lot of weird stuff. So I think that what we're going to see, I'm just guessing here, but my informed speculation about it is that we'll see this folded body mated over like possibly one die cast base. Like we started seeing the mega castings coming out. They've experimented with it for like the back of the Model Y. If anyone hasn't seen the Sandy Monroe video tearing that down, I highly recommend it. And then just I think yesterday on Twitter, Elon basically confirmed that the casting unit to make the entire rear understructure of the Y had arrived at Fremont.
Yes, I saw that.
So there. Yeah, so that's really exciting, and it's like, it seems like kind of a geeky technical thing, but where I see this headed, like they're not going to do less of that. Like if it's working, they're eliminating a ton of complexity, machined parts, things that have to be precisely welded, and they're not going to go backwards from that. So yeah, short answer, I think that we're going to see a skateboard for it, but I think it's going to be, like I think it's going to be honestly, a lot like the way a Matchbox car is made. There's going to be a die-cast base and this structure mounted over it that will be, they'll be connected in a way that optimizes for both of those. Because I don't think a casting is probably going to be quite as good for like, heavy duty, like weights and loads, whereas I think the body of the truck will be. They'll make a way to optimize that, but yeah, I think that's how it's going to go.
Okay, great. Just for people who've come in recently, this is Will from Origami Cybertruck. Will and I talked earlier in the interview about whether Tesla would stop selling cars. Right now, we're talking about other variants that will follow Cybertruck, like the Cybertruck, the minivan / Cyberbus video I posted last night. And next, after we're done with this, we're going to talk about other possible applications, like maybe a cyber home, like building a home out of the same style of construction, which may be crazy, but we'll see it. Old CDN Farmer asked, do I see Tesla doing similar robo-taxi concept with semi-truck fleet? Yes. I think it is the plan to have semi be robo-taxi driven, maybe one driver with 3 vehicles behind it, or just completely just robo-taxi driven. And Matt Byrne has asked cast versus stamped on Cybertruck. I think he's talking about the base.
Yeah. So yeah, the shell of it, the stainless steel shell will be folded, so it'll be
it's a sheet of steel folded.
It won't be stamped. Yeah, so it's not really stamped. It's scored and cut, probably with lasers and stuff, and then folded and welded together. But yeah, the base is going to be cast. Like I can almost guarantee that.
Kind of like you said with the Model Y's rear body section, and eventually they may go to full whole casting of like entire vehicles down the road too. So the thought I had with the video I made last night was, you take that cast bottom of Cybertruck and you use that to build other things on top of it. And the first idea I had was this minibus that Elon had talked about in 2016. And the advantage of when Elon talked about it in 2016, he talked about using the Model X chassis. The Cybertruck chassis, if we can call it that, or the Cybertruck skateboard, is bigger, it's longer, and it's wider. So if you want it, and it's still small enough that it's useful on most roads. Not like a full-size bus is 100 inches or 154 centimeters wide, but the Cybertruck is 80 inches, so it's 203 centimeters wide. So that it's not good enough for the really, really narrow roads that you'll see in some European cities or some other locations. But it's those vehicles there are larger vehicles in those countries. So I think it's sort of a good compromise, and you'll be able to squeeze all that in. So using that platform, did you watch the video? Did you get a chance to see my minibus video?
I haven't had a chance
Okay.
to watch that yet.
So the
No.
basic idea is you're taking the same length and width and making it tall.
Mhm.
Because Cybertruck is this
Right.
triangle shape, and there's a structural value to that. And I worry that you lose the structural value with what I did, which is it's not quite a rectangle. There's a little bit of curvature to it in places, but of course you have the flat sides because you got stainless steel. Big advantages are it's
Right.
bulletproof, which matters a lot more in places where there's a lot of violent problems, whether it's terrorism or crime. I was thinking when I made the video of terrorism in India or crime in Africa. And now I'm thinking Chicago. But what do you think about the general idea?
So yeah, so to go on some things, like not to geek out too much on the background of automotive manufacturing, but way back in the day when we first started making cars, we basically copied we adapted what people were doing with coach making,
Yes.
right? So horse-drawn carriages, literally, they had a frame, like a ladder frame, which is like two parallel pieces of metal that were connected with cross members, and then a body was put on top of that. We've gone away from that for passenger vehicles for what's called a unibody construction. That's where everything's kind of this molded, computer-assisted shapes that are like highly, highly organized because it helps with, crash worthiness. It's very, predictable and is very customizable like that. And it's also at scale more efficient to do it that way. However, trucks are still, not the Cybertruck, but other trucks are actually still mostly made that way. There's some exceptions like the Honda Ridgeline and stuff, but by and large, pickup trucks today are still made that way. And that's what allows manufacturers of pickup trucks to have a lot of flexibility with, like the F-150. Like you can get an F-150 from Ford in like a million different configurations, all these different lengths, different, bed configurations, lengths of that, different configurations of the cab, if it's a standard cab, extended cab, super cab, like all these different things, right? The reason you can do that with trucks and make that financially feasible is because you have that on-frame design.
Right.
Okay, so that's like a little background. So that's why you can't like easily make like a Model X 2 feet longer. Like you'd have to redesign the entire thing. It would be completely unmanageable. Okay. With a Cybertruck architecture, it's not the frame on a chassis like that exactly like an old car or a truck, but it's more like that. So the way I imagine it to be, and I'm not a Tesla designer or anything like that, but the way I imagine it to be is I think it's very likely that, being able to take that body off, and it provides certain structural elements and requirements, but it doesn't have to necessarily be as integral to the exact functioning of the structure as like it would be like the body would be in a Model 3, for example. So this is a long way of saying, I think there's a lot of credence to the idea that the cyber platform could become a very flexible platform to build off of and change the body all around, because it would just be from a design perspective, it would be like 100 times easier to make a cyber van based off a cyber truck than it would be to build a cyber van based off a Model X.
Right. So just real quick, somebody asked about self-charging EVs. I believe that the plan for Tesla is they will have Tesla charging stations, and that the robo-taxis will pull into the charging stations and they will charge themselves. And Elon has said it's trivial to set that up. Alvin Joshua Scott said, I personally think Saudi Aramco is Tesla's #1 competition. I may be overlooking companies and government agencies. I don't know. I guess I would need you to explain why, Calvin. Why do you think Saudi Aramco would be the #1 competition? Will, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I mean, I'm going to speculate on that comment is that I think that the Saudis, which probably involve Saudi Aramco, are investors in Lucid Air, which has shown some promise as an electric vehicle, but like whether or not that makes them, highly likely, I don't know. I don't want to be assassinated, so I don't want to say too much about Saudi Aramco. But I think Saudi Aramco's and Saudi Arabia overall are going to have their hands pretty full when we enter, I believe we have entered this like the terminal decline of oil.
Right.
cost and also consumption. So I think they're going to have their hands full. They better do something. But
I mean, I think they're trying to invest to find ways to generate returns so that they can survive. They know the collapse of oil is coming, and they're investing to try. So let me move on though. So Matt Burns asks, will military replace Hummer with Cybertruck? I think it would probably make sense in the long run for personally, I would rather see the military. I'll get political for a second. I don't think we should have troops in other countries at all. We have troops in 177 countries. I'll slip my politics in for a second. We're currently bombing like 7 or 8 countries. I think we should have 0 troops in any other country. And then Cybertruck, what our military would use would be a lot less important. But if they're going to...
Hey, no. Let's go down there for a second, Warren. Why are we in all these countries?
No one knows.
I mean, a big part of it... Well, no one knows, but I mean, a big part of it is like our need for other people's oil. Like, are we going to have a ground war after this? Like, why should we? That's ridiculous.
Well, I don't even believe in it then with the need for oil, but
sure, agreed.
That's my little libertarian kick there. So Trevor Jones asked, hi, Warren, do you think they will ever make an RV? And that was actually part of the video that I published last night, that one format for the Tesla minibus would. And I didn't do this in the video. I basically made it the same length and width as the Tesla Cybertruck, but you could certainly extend it and make it longer in the back. It is wide enough at 80 inches that would easily fit a queen bed in the back. The width of a queen bed, 60 inches.
Yeah, I've got a little Cybertruck model over there. It's too far for me to reach right now. It's a little paper model that I made that you can actually fold it up. I should release that to the community soon. But when I'm looking at it, like if you notice the Cybertruck, the rear wheels are fairly far back in the vehicle, which means that they could easily extend the body well past that. Like, you know, this is commonly done. Like I have a Ford Transit van that's actually a camping van that I converted. And you see them, there's like the long one, then there's the super long one. They're the same frame. You just extend that back part long and you got 3 more feet in the back, which is quite a lot from the perspective of someone who's living in it or hanging out.
Sorry, I just have to say a thank you to the Tesla Millionaire. I like the name too. Tesla Millionaire donated $5 with a super sticker. Thank you. And he said, thoughts on when government regulations would allow for autonomous vehicles. Keep up the good work. So I'm going to address that question first. Florida state law already allows autonomous vehicles. Now, there's the law saying it's okay, and then there's the practical getting it through whatever bureaucracy there might be. The answer to that question is, you know, I believe right now, for the uses where they are used, autonomous vehicles are already safer. And you have to keep in mind, is it safer than me when I'm driving at my best? No. But is it safer than the average driver is a very different question. I forgot where Will is. I think you said Mountain Time. Where you?
Normally I am. Right now I'm in actually in Georgia, so I'm on Eastern Time.
So I live near Miami, Florida. And if you've ever driven in Miami, there are places in the country where you can go where you see the drivers aren't really that good. And then there's other places in the world that are even worse than Miami. So plain and simple, it's going to be in about 2 or 3 months, FSD is going to be feature complete. Full self-driving is going to be feature complete. Dojo is going to be online very soon. The software is, Elon is already driving feature complete, 4D labeling, the foundational rewrite. He's already driving it. He just tweeted this the other day. The speed with which it is going to learn is going to be rapid. And as soon as Tesla is able to demonstrate, hey, this is a lot safer than the average driver, any regulator who says no is killing people. And it won't be hard to paint it that way. There will be an effort to stop it. The FUDsters will stop it, but we'll try to stop it. But, you know, I don't think they will get it cleared somewhere. I think Florida primarily. Places that have auto manufacturers or oil companies be more resistant because the special interests have sway, but we don't have those special interests here. We have Big Sugar, and Big Sugar doesn't care about oil or cars. So once it's debuted in Florida and it's running in Florida, then all the Florida people are going to say, wow, this is awesome. And it will spread rapidly, just like Uber and Lyft. Once Uber and Lyft worked somewhere, other people said, hey, somebody traveled somewhere and used it and said, hey, I want that. Did you have something to say about that, Will?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about this is that I think that the concerns about regulation are honestly super overblown. Basically, the way in my mind that I imagine is number one, it's not going to be a monolithic thing. It's not like, on December 31st of 2021, robo-taxis will be illegal everywhere. And then on January 1st, 2022, they'll be legal everywhere on Earth. That's not going to work that way. Like you see it like, Germany and Europe under, Germany's kind of like control has like really like kneecapped autopilot out there because they're trying to like, basically I think trying to create space for their own domestic German auto manufacturers to catch up. Good luck. But it doesn't really matter if there's a laggard like that, because for every laggard European regulator, there's going to be someone in Florida or China or wherever who's going to be like, yeah, game on, let's do it. So though I think that the supply of robo-taxis, if we're right about this, and Tesla is the first one to get robo-taxis out in a fleet like that, I think that they're going to have their hands full feeding these into whatever markets are coming online. I think they're going to be like honestly oversubscribed, just addressing all of the markets that will be legal as they open up. And I think they'll open up rapidly.
Okay, so
more rapidly than the supply of vehicles. Let's put it that way.
So we've covered the two topics we started with. I want to move to the third. It's actually before we move. The third topic is going to be the Tesla house. But before we do that, are there any other, like I have this minibus concept, which is basically a big rectangle. It's got some curves. I actually paid a guy on Fiverr, and he did a really good job of making it awesome. Check my most recent video for folks who want to see it. I think the design that he did, I took my design and made it a heck of a lot better. Like an all-glass roof. And actually, I think one of the ideas for that would be a solar roof. And the size of the roof, normally solar panels on a vehicle aren't big enough to generate enough electricity, but because the roof is long and rectangular, it might generate enough electricity. But are there any other thoughts you have to what you could do with the Cybertruck architecture that would, what else could you put on that skateboard, or what else could you do with that architecture in a vehicle sense first?
That's where it gets really interesting. I mean, obviously, any of the vehicle structures would have to be, like made by Tesla. But I actually have a video about this. I can't remember which one it was, but I'll send you the link to it. Maybe you can post it or whatever. Kind of talks about like how flexible this idea of this, cyber architecture is, because it's almost, I don't want to trivialize any of these things, but it is all, relatively speaking, compared to like a gigantic stamping press that creates like a Model 3 or something like that. It's almost like printing something out to make a new body shape. Now you'd have to obviously, crash test it and do all the engineering on it and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, if someone had a great plan for a design on Monday at Tesla for a new body that they wanted to do, by Tuesday they could have a prototype out there. Right. Seriously. Right. And so the sky's the limit with different bodies and different sizes and use cases. I think once they get that experience going with that Cybertruck as a base, you will see more use cases added very, very easily. Yeah. The other thing, though, that I wanted to say about that is this whole convergence of the die casting for the under part of the vehicle, combined with the cyber architecture over top, plus the autonomy. Imagine the effects of that on the robo-taxi. We're not going to see Model 3s as robo-taxis for very long, if we do at all. We're going to see a vehicle like a Cybertruck, and probably a couple of different sizes depending on what you need. But imagine like a 1 or a 2-person cyber vehicle. It's going to be so incredibly cheap and easy and quick for Tesla to do this. Just imagine what the factory is going to look like. They're going to have a giant press.
I have a video. I have a video about this.
Okay, yeah,
I have a video called the Podcar Robo-taxi, and I know. Let's go down this road just for a quick second. So
sure.
My picture is, and Elon has said this, that 80% of rides are individuals. 80% of the time, when you see a car on the road, it's running empty. It's running with one person in it, or it's like a taxi driver, Uber driver, and one passenger. So most of the travel that we see on the roads today is one person going from point A to point B. So it would be a lot more efficient to do that with a one-passenger vehicle that's self-driving, or just your own vehicle, which doesn't feel safe in a world of human drivers, But in a world of ultra-safe robo-taxis, it makes a lot more sense. And one of the key advantages, and one of the things I'm really excited about that people get really mad at me about, is I think that you're going to see, right now we see 50 kilowatt hour packs, 60 kilowatt hour packs, 100 kilowatt hour packs. I think the goal is to get to a single passenger vehicle that has maybe a 20 or 10 kilowatt hour pack. And then you can make 5 times as many vehicles as you can make vehicles with 50 kilowatt hour packs. So it's not only is it easier for Tesla to make them cheaper, it's easier to make more of them because they're battery constrained. And that's how you accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, as you take more people off the road or more people out of ICE vehicles.
Yeah, like I love my Model 3. It's red, dual motor. It's sweet. But let's be realistic here. It's not optimized for 95% of the driving that the average person does. Like the battery pack is way too big for what I need on a daily basis. I do a lot of road trips, so it actually suits me well, but it's way too big. It's got way too many seats in it for what's necessary. It's way too wide. It takes up too much physical space driving down the road. Like none of that is necessary, like 95% of the time of all vehicle miles traveled for moving humans around versus other things. So yeah, like as much as I love, like, this is what just makes me laugh is like, some people see like the Model 3 or Y or whatever as like this really advanced thing. And I'm like, no, guys, like this is not even getting going on where Tesla's headed with this. And that's what's really exciting to me about it. But yeah, you're right. We're going to see these little vehicles. No one, like, what are you going to care? Like, you don't care. Like, like you get into the thing, it's super cheap, it's fast, it gets you there, it can weave in and out if it has to through traffic, done.
Yeah. So, there's actually a couple questions here. So Dave, there's a lot of comments. I'm not going to be able to keep up with them. So Dave Rainbow says, how do you stamp parts out of stainless steel? You don't, you fold them. And that's been explained previously in the video and other places. VintageLimos.biz asks, let Will explain the process to manufacture a single passenger origami 2-person, he says cyberbot. I think he means like a pod car. Is the construction of that different than the construction of Cybertruck? The process of manufacturing it?
It might be slightly different, but only insofar as the way I foresee the undercarriage being done. Like, so a truck is going to have a certain like set of design constraints because people might reasonably expect to pull a really heavy trailer with it or put a big load in the back. And that's going to affect how you design the presumably cast chassis and the cyber exoskeleton. But in the case of, say, like a passenger vehicle, you don't really need to worry too much about that. So you might see, the overall structure of the vehicle would still be a cyber designed element, but you're not relying on it for the same kinds of strength that you are with a load-bearing member of a truck. You're still going to rely on it for crashworthiness and for protecting the occupants and stuff, but it'll be different. And what that means for like the under carriage part of it is, you're going to see that as one cast piece. The way I envision it, there's going to be a gigantic casting machine.
Yes.
It's going to literally cast the entire undercarriage of the thing. You're going to drop a battery pack in it. Like seriously, and then it's going to get everything bolted to it. The top's going to put on it, and it's out the door. It's going to be incredible to see what this looks like like as an engineering and a design and a manufacturing way. It's going to be really interesting to see.
One quick thing that I thought was a really cool comment was CFB said, 2-seater skateboard that can merge bolt into another 2-seater if 4 passengers are required. I don't think that's necessary. I like the idea. I think it's really cool. It's almost like a transformer thing. I don't want to get into a discussion of it. It sounds like a really cool idea, but at the same time, it's like Falcon Heavy was a good idea, and then it was like we wasted a lot of money on Falcon Heavy. It was smarter to just go into Starship. So you have. I think the solution there is you have some single passenger vehicles, you have some 2-passenger vehicles, you have a mix of vehicles, and when you're on your app and you're requesting a ride, you request what you need, and then my minibus idea, for the folks who check my video out from last night, the minibus idea, you can accommodate 30, maybe even 40 people if they're standing, or you can make it longer. It could be an RV. There's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. And the minibus idea, by the way, this talk that we have about the single passenger vehicle, it makes sense for North America. It makes sense for wealthy countries. For poor countries and for poor people, mass transit matters, and larger vehicles that can hold lots of passengers who don't mind who are willing to trade off the convenience of a ride from point to point or saving a lot of money by getting the ride cheaper. So I wanted to turn to the final topic that we're going to.
Sorry, can I just say one thing about that real quick? So like my dad lives down in Colombia, the country in South America, and so like something you just said really made me think about this. They had a lot of problems with corruption in the capital of Bogota, and they wanted to create a subway system there for years and years, but never happened for reasons. Well, eventually they just made these dedicated bus lanes down the middle of these major things, and I think that the system is called the Transmilenio. But anyway, basically, you have sort of like a subway, except it's above ground and it's bus powered. It's not a train, whatever. But you can imagine a cyber van functioning super well in that kind of situation, and it'd be even more beneficial because you wouldn't have to put 50 people on the thing to have it be maximally efficient. You could have a smaller one, not one or two people, but maybe 10 or 20 people, and those things can be whipping through there really quick, autonomously. Fast acceleration, fast braking, to slow down. So it's not a huge inconvenience like a slow, big bus would be. Great application for it. Yeah.
So the third topic that we agreed to talk about at the beginning, so I want to move to, is I have this idea in my head for the CyberHouse. I'm going to lay this. I'm planning on making a video about this CyberCabin, CyberHouse. I'm a person who thinks the world I'm one of those people who worries about the apocalypse, and we know Tesla wants to be the leader in apocalypse technology. If you watch the Jay Leno skit, the Jay Leno video with Elon and Cybertruck.
Yeah.
So one of the thoughts I had was, okay, I've got my eye on a piece of land I might buy, and then I would want to put a cabin on it. Well, if I was going to put a cabin in it, I would want to put a cabin with a solar roof. So I would like to have a Tesla solar roof. And I'd like the cabin to be made in a certain way, and I'd like the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. Well, Tesla's working on, they've talked about taking what they've learned from making the Model Y's heat octovalve into turning that into HVAC, because home HVAC is fairly inefficient. The way we heat and cool is fairly inefficient. So I have this vision. So I'm going to bounce my vision off you, Will, and those of you watching. CyberCabin, CyberHouse, whatever, is we're going to use the folded steel architecture of Cybertruck because it's pretty easy and it's pretty reasonably cheap. And, being an apocalypse type guy, I want my house to be bulletproof to handguns. And then you would have windows made of Tesla armor glass because can. But one of the central things is I should have come up with an image of this for this. There's this concept called a single pitch or single slope roof. We usually think of roofs as being peaked like this, but imagine a house where the roof is single slope and is to a side, and now this side is optimally tilted. It's aimed south and it's at the optimal angle, so it catches the most sun most efficiently on the solar panels, on the solar cells. And then inside the house, this is where the HVAC comes in. So we currently have a washer and dryer over here. We have a hot water heater over there. We have a furnace over there. We have a refrigerator. We have an oven. What if you put all of the things that do heating and cooling close to each other, not necessarily next to each other, but sort of near where your heat pump is going to be? Are you following me? So you've got this heat pump, and you use the octovalve, and okay, we need to cool the refrigerator more. Let's put that heat into the hot water heater. He just turned the oven on. Let's pump some more heat into the oven, and we'll cool off this other thing a little bit more. We can cool the freezer more to offset it, and you can make your HVAC system run. We're going to air condition the house, or we're heating the house. A lot of the savings, I think, that they're getting from the Model Y, and maybe they're cooling the battery pack for the power walls too. I don't know, but a lot of the heating and cooling that we do in the house doesn't offset itself. It's actually my neighbor. We almost did this. There's something called a hybrid hot water heater. I don't know if you've heard about this, where it has something on the top of the hot water heater, and it actually heats water using the heat from the space that it's in the garage. So my neighbor's garage is 5 degrees cooler than mine because it's able to use some of the heat in the garage. Keep in mind, I'm in Florida. Our garages are hot. It's able to channel some of that heat into the hot water heater. They're expensive. Over 10 years, it pays for itself, but it doesn't pay for itself over 3 years, so I was too cheap to do it. But what do you think about that general idea of the Tesla CyberCabin?
I would buy one in like 3 seconds. I have a piece of land down in southern Colorado that is in the sunniest part of one of the sunniest states in the U.S. It's very open to the particular area is gorgeous. It's got mountains on both sides. It's very and the particular place is very open to alternative architectures and stuff like that. I would buy one tomorrow and put it there. I guarantee it. I have a fair amount of experience, I would say, with in the building trades, and like one of the things that always just makes me super crazy about it is just how like absurdly disconnected all of the building systems are and how poorly they're integrated.
Yes.
So there's a huge advantage there, right? And it may not be for like necessarily for everybody, but like I would I would venture to say that like given the choice of it, I would rather live in a I mean, like if you imagine it, like Tesla could theoretically produce with this kind of design, motif and style, they could produce something that is very similar to like a mobile home, except that it wouldn't, immediately start falling apart like a traditional mobile home does. I'd rather live in a Tesla Cyber mobile home park than I would in a lot of other houses for like a lot of reasons. You know what I mean? And if you could do that at scale, they're going to be very durable. Stainless steel is an excellent thing to make, roofing and siding out of. These are going to be like indestructible and no maintenance. Yeah, I mean,
I just think, when you build a traditional house, you've got to, you still need a foundation, whatever you're going to do. You need something, a slab to put it on. You're not going to put it on. I imagine you could put it on dirt, but you probably want to put it on something. But after that, when you look at the construction of a house, you got framing, and you've got to do all this other stuff. And, I could see where you could just fold the house. And then yeah, you could, put some framing inside and put up your sheetrock if you feel like that's more comfortable. You could put some bricks on the outside if you wanted to, just for the heck of it. I could see zoning people saying, "Oh, you can't have a steel house in my neighborhood." But there are places where you could do it. But the simplicity of the construction would be much greater. It would be much easier to build that. And look, steel costs something, but it's not that expensive. It's really there's the Elon saying, the best part is no part, the best process is no process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the process of building a house is really, really complicated. If Tesla could make that simpler, that's one angle on it, is the steel construction, and then you could add on stuff or whatever. You can do whatever you want to do with it afterwards to make it look how you want it to look. That's easier. But then this idea, what do you think about this idea about the HVAC? Because Elon has talked about it. And I think it's more than just HVAC. I think it's the oven. I think it's the refrigerator. Instead of having a refrigerator, you have a refrigerated room. You have a walk-in refrigerator, and it's easy to run. You just insulate that room. What do you think?
Well, I think it does make so I actually spent the entire summer building an addition, about a 200 square foot addition. And one thing that I was struck by, I've built things like that before, but I was just like, man, there are so many processes to doing a stick frame built construction. It's like kind of insane. And there's got to be an incredible amount of room for optimizing that around in a modular way. As far as like the building systems, yeah, it's like loony to have a tiny little compressor, a heat pump basically on your refrigerator, and a heat pump on cooling and heating your house, and either a heat pump or electric heating element or like whatever heating your water. Yeah, I get why it is the way it is, but it doesn't need to be that way. And you definitely could make a case for a much more tightly integrated thing. You just got this sort of Tesla interconnect lines, refrigerant lines that you just take, and you get your main Tesla, compressor octavalve outlet thing, and you just, okay, well, I need to plug in my fridge, so I just, plug into the two ports, the high and the low side there, and plug it into the fridge. It controls that. Okay, then I just plug in these other ones into my dryer. Like the other day I was tweeting about this. Elon didn't respond to me yet, but I had this idea of like the Tesla clothes dryer.
Yes,
like a
clothes dryer too.
First principles clothes dryer. Let's put all your clothes in a dryer that you can actually draw a small vacuum on, so it lowers the vapor pressure of water. It makes it more readily able to evaporate. And then you can recondense that water outside by running a vacuum on it and a small amount of heat. Again, that's part of that heating system. You actually have two sides of the heating, one to heat the clothes up, and then another, the cooler side, to condense out the water. I bet you could get a five-fold increase. I'm just guessing here. I bet you get a five-fold efficiency increase on a dryer doing that.
Right.
For example.
Right. No. No. Between something like that kind of innovation, and then somebody commented that this common heat pump concept already exists in the UK. I haven't seen that myself, but I believe it.
Yeah. We tend to do things very inefficiently in the U.S. Is like, it's kind of outrageous, but yeah.
It's like
it offends my engineering sensibilities.
What's that? When I was in Japan many years ago, I was in Japan in 1990. I think it was 94, 95, and my hot water heater was just a flame that heated the pipe. Right? You didn't heat 75 gallons of water or 50 gallons of water. You just heated one little pipe, and that heated the water for the shower. And that seems to be a lot more efficient. And it's a common thing now. Not common. It's something that's done now. So I'm just looking at the comments. Central heating and cooling, octovalve, PV cabin. I'm sorry, I'm missing the comments here. So roads without heavy will work. Better to put the solar generation next to the road on the right-of-way land where it gets 100% sun. That is an issue with solar roof, I think, is it's not like you'd like it to be able to tilt to catch the morning sun and rotate. I don't know if the gain is that much from tilting to catch the morning sun and evening sun, or if it's just okay to keep it straight up.
Based on the cost of, I actually know the answer to this one in broad strokes, because one of my good friends
had a solar company,
Yeah, and my co-founder of that solar company, a guy named Zeke, actually wrote his master's thesis on that topic. Basically, you don't really get a lot of gain anymore. Back when solar panels were crazy expensive, it made sense to do what's called a tracking array. Now solar panels are so cheap, it's like just get as many of them up there as you can, and the angle isn't all that important. I mean, it does matter, but relative to the cost of the panel, it doesn't matter economically anymore.
Okay, so I'm running out of steam. Is there any? I looked through the comments. I didn't see anything that grabbed me. Are guys going to go boating with Cybertruck? I know I will. I don't know if Cybertruck's going to be the best boating platform. I think that's another question, is whether there are other options for Tesla to go beyond. I know Elon has said he's not planning to do airplanes. He's not planning to do. He's just like there's a very highly regulated environment. I do think that boats make sense. I think if the goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, cars are a big start. Cars, buses, trucks are a big start. I think boats, the big diesel ships that are shipping containers across the world, those emit a huge amount. I've heard lawnmowers are a big deal, but there already are electric lawnmowers, so I don't know that that's something that you need to dive into. I think electric boats would be cool. I don't know when that's going to happen or how. I think that's a great opportunity for somebody else to do a startup. I don't know if Tesla's going to do it.
Well, I mean, there's already people who are buying Tesla battery packs, used Tesla battery packs and electric motors and throwing them into boats. So, I mean, if Tesla were to do some sort of white label, battery pack for people in the future, once they get their battery thing solved, yeah, I could see that happening as well. Sure. But I don't think Tesla's going to be building, yachts or whatever.
Right. I just don't think that's... Yeah. There's a gain there, but I don't think it's that big of a gain, and I think Tesla is going for bigger pieces there. So, first truck end of next year, Matt asks. No, Matt, I think the Cybertruck. Well, so I don't know what you think, Will. Let's talk about this really quick for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they are already starting work on Terra, Texas, or Giga, Texas, Giga Austin, whatever. They've already started laying the groundwork for the factory. I believe the factory. It's August now. I believe the factory will be built by roughly June or July of next year, and it will be producing vehicles towards the end of next year. My guess is, and by the way, I have an order in. I'm assuming you have a reservation on a Cybertruck, Will? I have
11, yeah.
Oh, you have 11. I have one reservation for a dual motor Cybertruck, and my wife is mad at me, but I'm going to buy. I made more money on my Tesla stock than it'll cost, so I'm going to dig in and buy it. And I honestly view it as not so much that I'm going to use it. It's my apocalypse truck if the apocalypse happens, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm just going to press the go. My whole belief about the robo-taxi network is if you robo-taxi, there's going to be a button on your phone where you press it and it's the Go Make Me Money button.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, I'm not doing anything today. Press the Go Make Me button. The Cybertruck backs itself out of the garage and Go picks up fares and makes money.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that's exactly why I have 11 reservations, and also actually I knew about the Florida thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a reasonable chance that I'll have 11 of my Cybertrucks down there cruising the streets around your house before too long.
But you brought that up, and I want to ask about that. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read the language of whatever agreement I did when I put my reservation down. I could see Elon saying, "No, you're not getting 11." I could see Elon saying, "We're going to cap it at 2 or 3, money back." Maybe they'll go ahead and do it, but somebody I think we talked about that earlier. Let's see, the PV car and the PV habitat will become the same structure in the near future. So that is an interesting thought. Like my design for the minibus, which I don't think I'm brilliant or anything. It's just it seems pretty straightforward to me. I could see myself living in that. I live in a 3,200 square foot house with a pool in the backyard, which we never go in. I have a 3-car garage. Garage has become unnecessary in a robo-taxi world. But me personally, look, if I got a laptop and Wi-Fi or Starlink on the roof, I'm probably happy in a fairly small space. When I lived in Japan, I think I had like a 200 square foot apartment. So,
yeah.
And I was...
Well, I've actually lived in 3 different vehicles in my life.
Oh, yeah?
Like a converted school bus that a bunch of friends and I did, like shortly after college. We lived in that for about a year, traveling around. A 4-wheel drive converted to sort of like camp in a year in Australia doing that. And most recently, a conversion van that I converted myself from like a big Ford Transit van. Yeah, I'd be on board with that for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'm kind of running out of steam. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I had one kind of like closing thought about our initial topic again, just about like, exactly how Tesla is going to roll it out, the robo-taxi network, and exactly what the business model is. Like, I don't know for sure which way they're going to go with it. Are you going to be able to continue to buy a Tesla as an individual? Is it going to cost $300,000 because that's the value? I don't know what's going to happen. But one thing I would say is that as compared with pretty much anyone else out there in the the business world who's contemplating this sort of stuff, I think that Tesla's strategy and the sort of way that they've set themselves up to have a lot of options in their strategy with that would match best with what the situation is like when they get to the point of robo-taxis. Like, I just think that they're in such a dominant position. It's going to be really exciting to see, and I trust them to stay with the mission and do whatever it is that they are going to do, that will comport really well with the mission of moving to sustainable energy.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'm excited about it. Yep.
Well, listen, Will, thank you for coming on. This is Will from Origami Cybertruck on Twitter and on YouTube. And look him up. Please subscribe to him. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Warren Redlick, WR4NY Gov on Twitter. And you got my channel. Please subscribe to this channel if you don't already. Support me on Patreon. Really appreciate that. It's too late for super stickers because I'm about to end this, but I wanted to thank everyone for watching. And Will, thank you so much for coming on. I will be doing a live stream tomorrow with Wannabe Futurist, and we're going to talk about vehicle to grid and other topics.
Cool.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Warren. That was fun, man.
Thank you. Stay on for a second, Will.